Okay, Corey, we've got connections going now, so we can do our conversation correctly without it getting messed up. Why don't you start again?
Okay. So I have been practicing with day-to-day interactions, working on gladdening my mind, and when I'm talking with people, um, just being aware of uh, sort of negative thoughts coming up, and I'm just working on reprogramming myself and just noticing that how quick my mind is to become.
Oh, your voice got extraordinarily loud all of a sudden.
Oh,
Now it's back to normal.
oh, that was strange.
Might be on my end, but I don't know. So anyway, uh, go ahead.
Okay. Um, and I'm just really aware of how programmed I have been since what you've said since childhood, and I'm just trying to be aware of uh, just bringing in more wholesome thoughts. And I'm finding it is starting to change, even with the little amount of time I've been practicing.
Hmm. Yes, even though a cake that's been baked is big cake, you can disguise it with icing easy,
Mm,
right? Okay, so what that means is that even though we've got an entire pile, sometimes I even use the word sewer, we've got an entire pile of our past. That's that sanskara. And what we can find out is that we can cover that over with new information.
mm,
That's just the way things normally are. That um, the new information when we were learning got all mixed together in the past and it's become old.
mm,
So now new things that happen kind of get piled on top. And our whole idea is that we're going to cover over all of the old past with a lot of new wholesome stuff. The
mm.
example that I used and some of the students, they really thought it was funny and it's a good memory. Imagine that you've been uh, throwing things in the sewer. And you can throw good stuff into the sewer. You can throw hamburgers into the sewer, and they become sewage very quickly.
Mm.
That's exactly what's happened is that it all gets mixed together. However, if you stand out with the cover off of that sewer and start throwing really, really good things in it, so much so that it begins to stack up on top. And
Mm.
so now you have a lot of old sewage and a whole bunch of McDonald's hamburgers or something that's just covering the top, like 10 or 15 or 30 hamburgers deep. And because of that, whenever we process something with the mind, we're going to more likely process it with newer data rather than the really old stuff.
Mm.
Okay, so long as we don't keep stirring it up and mixing it up, that every time that we go down into it to bring up a bunch of bad feelings, that kind of then comes back to the top again, and so now all of the new hamburgers get mixed with the sewage. So the idea is that if we get into wholesome and work with wholesome and stay with wholesome, pretty good, all of our memories become wholesome.
Mm. All right. Mm.
Okay. Or another way of saying it is the way that you said it was reprogramming. Now, I've been a computer programmer for many, many years ago, and I tend to not want to use that word, but I understand that it's a common word for people to use in the sense of reprogramming. Okay. A better way of thinking about it is with a PC that you have the operating system, and then you have applications,
Mm.
right? The operating system we came with. What is that operating system? You can call it human, the human operating system built right into the DNA.
Mm.
Okay. And for most users in computers, they don't get into the bowels or into the depths of the operating system. You don't care about how drivers work so long as they do work. Because if it doesn't work, you can't access your data on the hard drive. right? But you don't care what's in there because it's working.
Mm.
Okay. An example of that is, did you see my hand go by the screen?
Yes.
That's part of the internal deep programming that we're talking about. That's part of the operating system, the ability to see, to hear, to whatnot like that. Okay. So the applications then would be, what are we doing in this kind of present moment? And so we need that deep programming. We can back to the DNA. Now, there's a particular word that's used for that. In modern science, we call it instincts. So the instincts are our basic programs. An example of that is, you see a snake, how do you feel?
Not good.
All right. Here's an example. This is a funny example, by the way. This was in New Mexico, someplace. I forgot where it was, but it was one of the famous places a long time ago because of the cowboys. All right. And they had a museum there because of this. And that they had two exhibits. One was a baby rattler, the rattlesnake, and so they've got a lot of rattlesnake stuff. And they have this baby rattler open this box to see, and it's actually an infant's toy, a baby rattler, right? And so that's one of them. But the other one is that they will give you $5 if you can stand and put your hand to the glass of a real live rattlesnake and have him strike the glass on the other side of your hand. Can you keep your hand on that glass?
Right.
And nobody hardly ever gets that $5. That they will jerk or move their hand when that snake strikes. That's built in programming.
Mm.
Okay, so now we take that and we're walking down the street and somebody touches us or rubs us, and we have that same reaction. So that's where the programming has gone wrong. The programming has kept us alive. This is actually, you can call that the self-preservation instinct.
Mm.
That when you see a snake strike, you want to get out of its way.
Yeah.
Even if intellectually you know 100% that you're safe. We still have those fear reactions to it, right? But we can now begin to make those instincts function correctly, rather than allowing them to have gone wild the way that we have. That in fact, somebody can actually use words and say something, and we have that same reaction that we have to this rattlesnake.
Mm.
Okay? Mom can come into the room and says, "What the hell are you doing?" And we have that same reaction, right? But that was learned and put in top of the uh, the the instinct. So you can think about it like this: that the instincts are like buckets, and over the years we fill these buckets with stuff. Now, when you put heavy stuff in the bucket, that changes the nature of the bucket. When the bucket is empty, it's easy to carry around. But when it's full of a lot of rules and supposed tos and whatnot like that, it gets heavy and hard to carry around.
Mm.
Hard to hold and hard to pick up and carry. So basically what happens then is that the contents of the bucket begin to define where the bucket goes and how it operates and other things like that. And so what we're actually doing here in this way is that we're changing the content of the buckets. We're changing the rules. All the supposed tos and shoulds and woulds and the way that the world is supposed to work according to our parents and people that we learned it from when we were children.
Mm-hmm.
And we throw that out and we make a new set of rules. Okay? And I recommend just one rule, because that's the entire teaching of the Buddha, dukkha, dukkha nirodha. That's the only rule that we need. If you see dukkha, avoid it immediately. Get out of its way, just like you could see the dukkha. In fact, everything like dukkha then becomes like that rattlesnake, and we respond and we avoid it. Okay, so the example would be that somebody's driving their car down the highway, and the cops turn on their flashing lights and hit their siren. That point in time is like that rattlesnake in the mind, and people respond to it. But the way that they respond to it then is, why did you stop me? And they get, especially in the US, they get into the cop space, and so cops on their stops, they're automatically ready for people to be unhappy and upset. They've got their hand on their gun, etc., like that, you know.
Mm.
All right. And so this is a tense situation. But if you've got your mind together and you can recognize, oh no, this is not a cop stop where I am being punished like I was when I was a child. This is an opportunity to make a new friend.
Mm.
Okay. So, hello, officer. I'm so glad to see you tonight. I've heard so much good stuff about your organization, and I just wanted you to know that I fully support you. Is there
Mm.
anything I can do for you, officer? No, I haven't broken any laws. Here's all my information. But you don't admit to anything. You don't give him something that he can use. All you give him is friendship.
Mm.
And that works because most of the people on the internet, they talk about, lawyers come on and people who have been ex-cops, et cetera. They get on the internet on YouTube and talk about how to deal with cops and stops, and they're always thinking about it from a legal perspective rather than a Dhamma perspective.
Mm.
And the Dhamma is that we can make friends with this guy. He's not an enemy. He's not a rattlesnake. We have to wake up and see that this guy is just a guy.
Yeah.
He's wearing a blue suit and he's got an attitude, but we can change his attitude by changing our attitude. So, back to the bucket and the contents of the bucket. We could say then that the bucket itself is kind of like who we are at a very deep level. It's the me, the owner, the instincts. And then we have all of these memories piled on from childhood, etc., about what the world should be like. And that fills up that bucket. So the bucket then becomes the controller of your life. In other words, who you really are, you rarely share with people. And we could call that intimacy, is when we throw out all of the rules and are just friends with each other. But mostly that doesn't happen. Mostly the owner is not in control.
Mm.
There's some controller, the rules, the way things are supposed to be. You can think of it also like this: that the instincts and the feelings and the bodily functions are all controlled by the part of the brain that is in the anterior cortex, back in here. They used to call it the reptilian brain,
Mm.
and it's got a lot of features that are very similar. Our brain is built and wired just like a snake's brain. But then what happened is that when mammals took over, they added a middle cortex called the temporal lobes or the mammalian brain, and this is where all of that information is stored.
Mm.
And then we have the frontal cortex that humans have that the animals don't have, which is the ability to put things together, the ability to connect, pattern recognitions, etc., like that. This is why the humans can learn so quickly and the animals can't. That's why we can invent things. The problem is that much of the stuff that we invent is garbage.
Mm-hmm.
And what we need to do is to stop inventing so much garbage and start collecting more data, doing more pattern recognition. This is why the Buddha didn't know any of this scientific stuff, but he actually still knew within his own language context how the mind worked.
Mm.
And so without using the frontal and the mid and the anterior cortex, you can actually see that the Buddha was talking about those kind of things.
Mm.
That in fact there are suttas that more than one, several suttas use the term underlying tendencies. Back in the Buddha's day, they actually talked about it, that there is an argument that can be made about humans in the sense that they're selfish or that they are predisposed to do certain things. And the answer is no, that there are underlying tendencies or tendencies to do something, but it's not already built in. In other words, the buckets are there, but there's difference between the buckets and the contents. So the underlying tendency of an infant is to protect itself, but it does not have an identity. The identity is part of the content of the bucket, not the bucket itself. The me is content. And so we make that mistake. We think that we are me. I am the body, I am the feelings, I am the mind, etc., like that. And that's not true. Body is the bucket, but I am not the bucket. I am the idea of the content of the bucket. Right? And so in that way, what's in the bucket, the contents of the bucket, determines the personality, not the actual basic instincts that every tender infant is born with. They're born with these instincts, but then they get layered on. So there's an underlying tendency to selfishness, but a tender infant is not selfish, but he will get that selfishness added to because of the selfishness that is part of our culture.
So would the ego come into that category as well?
Well, I'm not sure whether when we use the word ego, you see, because it's got various definitions. Okay, that in fact Freud used the word ego in the sense of the frontal cortex, the human part of the brain. That is actually in Freudian language, it's the id that we call the ego, but mostly what the ego is the superego. When we talk about the ego in our language, like being egotistical, that's not an instinct to be egotistical, nor is it the ego that is in the pattern recognition machine, the frontal cortex, that in fact that kind of ego, egotistical, would be from the superego. It's learned behavior. And we can't tell the difference between what's learned behavior and what's really an underlying tendency or an instinct. Okay, so people go around living their lives instinctively, but not purely instinct like a newborn infant, but the instinct that is heavily laden with content, like the bucket is full of crap. Okay, and so what we need to do then is to change that from all of the unwholesome input and start having wholesome moments, wholesome input, wholesome memories. And that then changes the content of the bucket. We can actually start over again. Never mind, start again. Throw the old rules out and bring in a new rule. And when do we do that? Every time we think about it. Every time that we remember, oh, I don't have to behave the way I used to behave. I have choices now. And so this is an important point about the personality view. We use that term personality view in the sense that there is actually no personality itself. There's just a view of personality. Okay? And so we, in high school, they talk about personality in the sense of who you are, but that's not actually who you are. It's the learned behavior. So we present to the world our idea of who we should be. We don't actually present who we really are. Everyone is wearing a facade. Everyone is wearing a facade. And then we go so far as to think, I am that facade. You've seen churches, some churches, I've seen more modern churches like this, and also in the Old West. You understand what I mean by the word facade?
Yes.
Okay, so there are actually some facades that, upon walking up to this building, you've got big steps and columns, and it looks like Greek architecture. This must be a U.S. government building, you know? And you walk through the door, and it's a dilapidated shack in there. Or the storefront is bigger than the store.
All right.
Or the saloon has a great big, looks like a two-story building, but that two-story building is only a facade. It's only actually a one-story building.
Right.
It may even have windows and things like this. And so this is what we do: is we have this facade called a personality view. And that facade is easy enough to change. The actual building, not so much. And so the personality view is the facade that we create to or present to the world. And now in religions, especially Christianity and to a degree in Islam, they make sure that you understand that that facade was given to you by God and it cannot be changed. And the various scriptures would be like in Romans 5, it has the passage, "Who are you to be good? Only God is good."
Really?
Mm-hmm. And other ones like, unless or if you take Jesus Christ as your Savior, thou shalt be saved. Which means that we are an infant and we need a nanny, a celestial nanny, but it's just a nanny. Okay, well, when we were really young, we needed a nanny. Now we're going to learn how to be our own nanny. What that means is we change our personality. The question, though, is that everybody gets, and Christianity has a solid no to the question, can you change? And the answer to Christianity, no, you can't change. You've got to go get forgiveness because you're broken. You've got an original sin. All right? And you can't do nothing about it except just to suck up to something that's going to help you out, give you some mercy, give you a free ticket on the plane to heaven. To where the Buddhist monk and people like that, we earn our ticket to heaven. We don't mess with these economy seats. We're in first class. We've earned our flight to heaven. Okay, so that whole idea then is with the Christians, they can't change. And the whole point about the teaching of the Buddha with the personality and the personality view is that we can change. You've probably heard of the word, use the word fetter. In Pali, the word is kilesa, and there's also the word asava. And the word asava and kilesa are used kind of interchangeably, even in the suttas. Now, the word asava actually means like a pus pocket, a canker, a blackhead, pox like smallpox. Okay, and they're just all over the place. That in fact you can see some dermatologists have their videos, and you can see them with all their instruments. They go in one blackhead after another, one blackhead, and they pop, and some of them go push, and some of them are just squeeze out, etc., like that. Well, this is the way of asavas is that we've got the pores of our skin are all clogged up. We even have acne. All right, and so the word kilesa actually has more to do with rope and bondage, tied down, just like and so the English language word is translated as fetter. Okay, like the safe, you can't pick up the safe and take it away because it is fettered to the wall. That when you ride the horse into town, you have these what they call a sawhorse or a hitching post. And we take and wrap the reins from the horse around that. We fetter the horse so that he can't just walk away and go all over town.
Mm.
Hmm. So that's what the word fetter means, and that they have them listed. The first one is personality view. The second one is Sila Bhatta Paramasa, or rites, rules, and rituals. There's that content. Okay? The content of our minds determine our personality. And when we change the content of our mind, the personality changes. And when we throw out the contents of the mind, in other words, we throw out all the rites, rules, and rituals and only take on the one rule of dukkha, dukkha, nirodha, then that makes everything really lightweight.
Mm.
There's nothing left much there. And not only that, but that also kind of empties out the personality. But the important part about the personality view is that it's just a view and it can be changed. Many Buddhists in Asia, they don't understand that they're locked into the same method of instruction that the Christians are. And they use karma and the karma machine to do that. Like, you can't change the circumstances or what's in your life. That was already determined when you were born. You were born to certain parents, and that determines your life and your destiny for the rest of your life, as well as the karma machine coming in and screwing with you from time to time.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And then later, after you're dead and buried, the karma machine will then dig you up one more time just to kick you in the ass. That's the rebirth, okay? And the people then with that teaching get the idea, oh, I can't change. I can't make great big changes in this life because of all this old past baggage from lifetimes and lifetimes. And so people get the idea they can't change.
Mm.
And so the best they can do is sort of make merit, sort of suck up to the karma machine so that they can get a better chance next time. And this is a teaching that's quite widespread in Asia.
Right.
And reality is that the personality is determined by all of the memories of the rites, rules, and rituals that we have learned, and that determines our personality, and it can be changed. That in fact you know for sure that your personality changes in various situations. For example, the guy who goes to the football game is not the same guy who goes to work.
Mm.
And the guy that goes to work is not the same guy that gets off work. In that regard, the personality is already changing. It's just got a box around it, and the box around our personality is the way we're supposed to do it, the rules. And so here you are beginning to wake up to the fact that you can change those boundaries.
Mm.
You can even erase the boundaries. You don't need any boundaries to define who you are.
One thing I am noticing with my interactions with different people, I get a sense of awkwardness in different groups now because I'm not purposely bringing myself to the level of conversation that's going on, so it feels a little bit awkward.
Well, maybe part of what's happening is that now that your boundaries of personality are becoming fluid, you're not, when you're in a situation in the old days, you knew exactly what to do. You had the rules to tell you exactly how to behave. You go into that same situation now, and there's a little confusion because you've got choices now.
Mm.
You can choose what you're going to do, and we're not used to making those choices, and so we get a little confused about, well, what do I do here and what do I do now? In the old days, we knew exactly what to do, even if it screwed stuff up.
Mm.
And what was that? We followed our instincts and followed the rules. But now we can recognize that basically what we're going to do is to put the frontal cortex finally in charge. When we were tender infants, it was only the reptilian brain that was in charge. If the tender infant didn't have that functioning reptilian brain, it would stop breathing. The heart would stop working. The kidneys wouldn't work. In fact, nothing works except for the fact that this reptilian brain was keeping things going. But then it comes along about 3 or 4 years old, and the mom, the nanny, starts getting critical with the child. Pick up your toys, do what you're told to do. Or another way is that a new baby is born, and the elder baby is no longer a baby. He's now mommy's little helper. All right. And so he's got to go around doing what he's told to do. You know, girls, we start to teach them about the kitchen and food preparation and whatnot. So as we're kids growing up, the it looks like that the age of maturity has been changing. You could say that way, way back in olden times, the age of maturity was about 6 years old, because the 6 year old has enough dexterity that he can go off with the hunters. He becomes a hunter. He's one of the men. He doesn't hang out with the babies and the mommies anymore. He goes out with the big guys. He's ready to go hunting. So at the earliest, maturity for humans was about 6 years old. But lifespans only were 35 years or so.
Mm.
And then over time, it changed to where they could know that actually 6 years old is just the time to put them to work, but their brain is not functioning in an adult fashion yet. And so they changed it from 6 to 12. And so the example of that would be in the Jewish tradition, they have the bar mitzvah and the bar mitzvah at about the age of 12, because that's a signal that the guy is old enough to be completely functioning in our society. But you can know in the United States, they still have conflicts about that. Is the age of maturity 18? Is the age of maturity 21? And it looks like, in fact, that over time it keeps moving. That in modern times, I mean, 18 was old enough 100 years ago. But now it's more like 25. I have met a whole lot of 25-year-olds that act more like kids and children than they do like adults. They
Wow.
haven't fully matured yet. Okay, so the frontal cortex takes a long time to mature. But in that context, what we need to do then is to make the shift, instead of just having it mature while either the child or the parent and the rules are the boss, or is it going to be the frontal cortex who becomes the boss of your life? In other words, are we going to start waking up and looking at what's going on? Waking up and looking. That whole waking up process is changing it from the settled we know everything into look at this is new. And so we're making that change. In Freudian language, we start off as the id, we move into the superego and wind up in the ego. Or in Barry Burns' language, we start off as the child, then we become the parent at about 6 years old, being all the rules and everything, and that the adult doesn't come on the scene for years and never does become the boss. Which that's why we have language like my feelings. I feel bad. I feel sad. I feel frustrated. Okay? Why? Because we're speaking out of that child. We're speaking out of the feelings. But out of the adult will say, I see anger. I see frustration. I am not the frustration itself. I can see it. Wow, what a different perspective. This is moving our viewpoint from I am into, oh, there it is. And this is the wholesome way of doing it. And we start looking at it from that perspective, then we're no longer dealing with the old past I am frightened, I am angry, I am upset, which is that child state, into basically through the adult then begins to change the parent ego state from the critical, oh, stop it, into the nurturing. There now, everything's okay. You're all right. All right. And so we learn to start nurture ourselves through wisdom. And in that regard, we actually are growing up. We're actually becoming more adult, seeing things the way that they really are, rather than seeing things that have to go through this rule system to make sense out of, or the instinctual system. And most of the people in the world live off a combination of instinct and the rules, so that you're not learning anything. They're stuck in a certain way. That, in fact, you could say that the apprenticeship system that has been in production worldwide since the dawn of times, the boy goes hunting with his daddy, the father is a carpenter, the boy is a carpenter. Now we see it in our times as the accountant, his son's an accountant. If you're a movie star, your son's a movie star. If you are a politician, your son becomes a politician. This, in fact, in a big way, we call this nepotism. And when we call it nepotism, that's a negative thing because we're saying that I, me, and my family are more important than the right way to do it, the actual real thing to do. And that the problem is not the daddy, the problem is the younger one who then later becomes the daddy in the next generation. But in our society, we've given that over to a lot of freedom so that by basically we can ask a kid, what do you want to be when you grow up? That question was not ever asked 100 years ago, 200 years ago, because we already knew what he was going to be. His dad's a farmer. You're going to be a farmer. Your dad's a fireman. You're going to be a fireman, right? That was the way that, so, but you can see though that is nothing but content. That's nothing but, oh, this is what I know I learned farming from my dad, therefore I am a farmer. So even though we have learned to do that outside of the profession, in the sense that my dad was a lawyer, but I'm a chef. Okay, that kind of mentality has shifted, but not the deeper stuff. In the sense that our dads teach us how to feel. When your dad gets the mail and sees, oh, the water bill is so high, then for the rest of your life, every time you open a water bill, oh, it's so high. You're judging it by your dad's standards, and those standards were set up 30 years ago, or actually maybe much later than that, because he learned it the same way from his dad. Okay, so we pick up tens of thousands of rules about the way that things are supposed to be. And so we go blindly with that combination of, let us say on an airliner, you have an automatic pilot system. Okay, so the automatic pilot system has two features. It it has the physical equipment in order to raise and lower the steering equipment on the plane. You know, every wing has these flaps.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Okay, and the tail wing has a flap that moves back and forth. Okay, so all of those things are already wired into the cockpit for the pilot to operate. That's the instincts. Okay, and then the automatic pilot is a gyroscope, possibly a compass and some other things like that, so that it can manage that plane, but it does it very, very simply. Okay, so that gyroscope and all of that kind of stuff then would be the rules about how to operate the plane with automatic pilot. But it's not very smart. It's a set of rules, and it can keep the plane level. It can, in fact, do some banking, but not very much. Mostly the job is to keep the horizon level, to keep the plane level, and to keep it going. That's what the automatic pilot does. Well, guess what? So many of us humans operate on that kind of automatic pilot. We go by the rules. And at any time that we have turbulence or there's a mountain in front of us or anything like that, we need to wake that captain up, the real human, the one who can actually see. You see, the automatic pilot system, it only has an internal mechanism. It doesn't have the ability to see. It doesn't hear the radio. The radio says, oh, you're getting too close to this other plane. You need to move away or something like that, right? And so we go on automatic pilot, and we live our lives mostly that way. Now, in an airliner, you have to have a pilot. They don't have artificial intelligence and full automated, so they can't take off, they can't land, they can't decide where to go. The automatic pilot just keeps things going in the direction that they're going correctly. And we live our lives like that until we wake up that captain inside of our own brain. We wake up that agent who can see and deal with the outside world and let it then operate the plane, the contraption, instead of having it done on this set of rules, this set of automatic pilot. But we have to remember to do that. We have to remember to wake up the captain. This is what sati is all about. Wakey, wakey. Come into the present moment. Get into your senses, into your eyes, into your ears, into the reality of the situation. And we need to keep doing that over and over again and recognizing that things are okay right now. You see, the problem with the automatic pilot that humans have is that it's loaded down with dangers, not inherently, but because it's not making the correct choices, because it's not making choices out of the reality of the moment, it's making choices out of the old past. And so that's here's an example of that is that, and this actually happened to me one time, getting on the internet, looking at the map, and deciding to go from here to there. And guess what? Between here and there, the road goes here, and then the road comes here, but between it is a giant ravine.
Oh.
And there's no bridge there. That this is a dead end on this end and a dead end on that end, but the map itself, Google, didn't know. It just put that road right through, and it didn't exist in reality.
Oh.
All right, so this is exactly what we mean is that we think that we know that there's a road there because it's in the program, and we wind up in a ditch instead. Sometimes a ravine.
Yeah.
All right, so this is why we need to start watching where we're going, because the territory is not the map. And we have a lot of maps in our mind. The maps, in fact, are that Silabata Paramasa, or all of the rules. And we go according to the map rather than according to the terrain. Have you ever heard of NLP, Neuro-Linguistic Programming?
Yes.
Okay. This is what we're talking about. The map is not the territory. That's a very famous line out of their stuff. Don't go by your maps, start looking and go by the real territory that you're in.
Mm-hmm.
And then you would say, but because I'm not going by the map, I'm not sure of what to do with this new territory that I'm in. I used to know exactly what to do, but it was not the right thing, but at least I knew what to do. Now I'm in a new situation and I've got to make choices. I've got to figure things out. I've got to look. I've got to examine rather than just doing it the old way through habits. Now, the very first way that we start doing that is by getting away from the world and getting into seclusion. Because otherwise, if you're out into the world, then you're dealing with a whole bunch of automatic pilots. Let's get into seclusion to where we only have to deal with one automatic pilot, this one, and start watching and start making some changes to it and start waking up. Oh, I don't have to be on automatic pilot right now. I can wake up and enjoy the moment. I can take a deep breath and be here now and recognize that right now I'm safe. There are no rattlesnakes. There's no problems, no worries. Why do I keep thinking that there's worries? Well, the answer to that is because that's part of the old program. You're supposed to worry. Even if there's nothing to worry about, you got to go find something to worry about. Now we got to worry. Um, some people actually, because of this content, they become worry machines, and when they don't have any worries, now they've got a really big worry because they don't even know what to worry about, and so they start worrying about what to worry about. Or another way of saying it is that the human brain is a problem-solving machine. Actually, it's not. It's a pattern recognition machine. A lot of people mistake it all. The human brain is a truth-seeking machine. No, it's not a truth-seeking machine. We don't even know what truth is. Truth, in fact, is an abstract concept. It's a concept. Reality is real. And we need to open up, wake up, and start living in the real world rather than living in the conceptualized world that we've created. Can you remember to do that? Well, we sit down and we practice doing that. We practice. Don't worry about what you were thinking about before. Start thinking about what's happening now. Start thinking about this breath. Start thinking about the body with the touch of the cloth, with the wind on our face, etc., like that. And so we come back into the present moment through the body and through the senses. And with that, then we have the ability now to process data correctly through our pattern recognition machine rather than filtering it through the supposed tos. The reality and the way things are supposed to be are not in union with each other. And yet we operate under the conditions of it's supposed to be this way without actually checking out it actually is this way over here.
Mm.
Just like the automatic pilot is limited. It can't throw those boundaries off and really see what's going on in the present moment.
Mm.
But we haven't been doing that our whole lives. Because the human frontal cortex wasn't fully developed, it never, until even after it is fully developed, it's never given the job of being the boss here. That the boss has always been the set of rules that we have, and we're supposed to live according to that set of rules. And one of the rules that people have, going back to the example we had before, is I've done nothing wrong. That cop should not stop me. He's making a mistake.
Mm.
I'll tell him all about it. You hear all of that?
Mm-hmm.
He's not supposed to stop me. The reality is he did stop you. Let's deal with that.
Yeah. Mm.
And so how do we learn to do that? By practicing very often to keep coming back into the present moment, to keep coming back into the present moment and checking things out over and over and over again. And pretty soon we begin to develop those skills of that frontal cortex so that we can actually feel the way that we want to feel. You see, the rules have already decided that you're supposed to feel a certain way in a certain condition. In America, the example of that is that in the old days, Thanksgiving was a holiday, so everyone can come together and the family can reunite, and it's a wonderful holiday. But nowadays, um, Thanksgiving has become a war because the various people in the family have various political views, and they think that their political views are more important than family. The reality is that family is much more important than any political view. Politics changes constantly, but your family is more stable. Okay, so this is an example of letting the rules run rather than the wisdom. In the old days, the wisdom was there. Let's have a Thanksgiving holiday so all the family can come together. That in fact in China, that's the New Year's. It's the same thing in Thailand, that we have those annual ceremonies. It actually causes a great deal of transportation difficulties, especially in China. It's like the whole nation for one day, and then 3 days later, another whole day, to where transportation is just screwed up because
Mhm.
you've got the ability to handle 100,000 people and you're handling 500,000 people because, okay, so the roads are choked and all of this kind of stuff. But when they get to the family, it's actually a family. It's the reestablishment and reconnection of the family that's so important. And Thanksgiving should do that in America, but it doesn't. It winds up being a warfare. People come together to have the family connections and they fight with their family over politics.
Shame.
Well, that if someone would wake up, and just an old grandmother, every time the politics starts up, she can say, well, let's not talk about that. I remember Uncle Jimmy from 15 years ago, and he was doing this, that, and the other thing. Let's talk about him. Let's do some family connections rather than. But very rarely does that happen. Almost everyone gets in the war of politics rather than being with family. So, um, why is that? The reality is that family is important and we can see that. But the rules are that, oh, we've got a messed up economy and a messed up politics and system and all of that kind of stuff. We need to fix it right here at our dinner table at Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
Not going to fix anything. All we can do is just have fights
Hmm.
with no results. So that coming with a political agenda is something that a lot of people have. That in fact has gotten so bad now. In the old days, oh, the boy can't date a girl who's from a different culture. Now the boy can't even date a girl from who's from a different political party
Mm.
because politics has become the rule of the day. But politics should not be on the radar at all.
No.
We can throw out all of our politics and just treat people, everybody, as if they were family. But we need to practice that. Going back to that point is that these rules and the way that we've learned to do things is so entrenched. That bucket is so full of crap that we need to practice emptying it out. Practice. Stop thinking about all the problems and all the frustrations and all of the uh, rules and how we're supposed to do it. That in fact, one of the reasons why meditators fail at practicing meditation, and quite a lot of them do, they fail at it because they're trying to follow some rule that they got someplace. This is how you're supposed to meditate,
Mm.
right? And so they're following the rules and they're not getting any place. But a much better rule would be meditation means is to throw out everything and just enjoy yourself right here, right now. And keep remembering to throw that stuff out and come back to the present moment. And that takes that frontal cortex. We can't do that by rote. It has to be done through wisdom. And we start to developing that wisdom the first time. Oh, never mind. I see that the mind is in the hinder's place. I'm thinking about the fight that I had with Aunt Susie. Aunt Susie is not here right now. Let's throw Aunt Susie out of the mind and enjoy the fact that Susie's not here right now. I don't have to fight with her right now. Wow, what a relief it is.
Hmm.
And start going for that relief over and over and over and over again. We don't have to solve the problems that we think of. We can let them mellow. We can check it out later. Then, in fact, I have seen that even with working with the OSF website. Is just that I look at it and I think, oh, this is really bad, and I'll work and work and work, and then later I'll come back and take another look and says, oh, it was actually easy. I just didn't know what to do. And so here, by doing that investigation, we can figure out what's the right course, what's to do right now. But we very rarely do that. A lot of the meditators, they'll sit in meditation for 10,000, 20,000 hours, hoping that some change will happen, to where, in fact, the first 10 minutes of their 10,000 hours, they could have started making changes right then and there, rather than sitting, waiting for the karma machine to waltz in and shock them with Shaktipat and say, okay, now you can feel good. Okay, now you can have your bliss. You put in all the work and all the effort. Or maybe after I prayed to God 10,000 hours, now I can get his Shaktipat and feel good. And it doesn't happen that way. No, we have to make that change ourselves. And so the meditation should be making changes. Making changes. What change? To stop thinking about the past and start thinking about right now. Right now is actually quite nice. All of your problems, every problem, is either in the past or in the future. But right now, nobody's got any problems, except for the ones they're thinking about that are in the past or in the future. So all we have to do is stop thinking about the past and stop thinking about the future and start looking at what is right now. And that's a major part of the practice right there. Now, by gladdening the mind, or by throwing out the unwholesome thoughts, gladdening the mind here in this sense means more than just having happy little thoughts or easygoing little thoughts, but rather what we're doing with that is changing the state of mind. What is the states of mind? Well, we can be dull, we can be sharp, we can be contracted, we can be expansive, we could be delighted, we can brighten the mind, we can dull the mind down, etc., like this. And so by practicing the gladdening or the brightening of the mind, we're actually changing the state of mind. Now, it's actually very easy to see that the state of the mind that someone has determines the kind of thoughts that they're going to have. Yeah. The example that I use is two boxers finish the match, 15 rounds or so. One won, one lost. They go to each one to their room and get a massage. And while both of them are laying each individual rooms getting a massage, they're thinking about the fight, but they're not having the same thoughts. One of them won, and he's having winner's thoughts, and the other one lost, and he's having loser's thoughts. Right? Okay. So the circumstances determine the state of mind that we're in. The state of mind determines the content of the mind. And so we're intentionally changing our state of mind from, oh no, that happened and I got to go fix it, into, oh, no problem, I'm okay. Then, in fact, another word that we can introduce to this state of mind is the word attitude. In the Eightfold Noble Path, it's referred to as Sammasankappa, which is translated wrong as thought. But some of the translations are closer when they translate it as right intention. A better way of looking at it is right state of mind or right attitude. Now, when we were kids, every child, every infant is born as a kind of an empty slate, but fairly quickly the infant figures out that they need help. When the child gets hungry, the only thing he can do about hunger is yell, and the baby will start to cry, and then the bottle comes. What happened? Oh, I can cry and get a bottle. And that, guess what? That's a rule that the infant has that doesn't work 25 years later.
Mm-hmm.
That in
Yeah.
fact, you cry, you're not going to get a bottle. You might get a fistful of cop spit. And so we make these rules up as we go along. If I cry, I can get fed. But we do that out of the victim's mentality. And we stay in that victim's mentality even when we get 6 years old and we've got to go to school. What does that mean? That means that we're told to go to school. How many first graders are excited about going to school day after day? None of them. Every kid wants to go someplace else. So the teachers have to say, Johnny, pay attention. Don't daydream. All right? Because the kids don't want to be in school. Then they come home and they get fussed at from mom. Do your homework. Clean up your mess. Clean up your room. Pick up your toys. Do what you're told to do. Hold mommy's hand while we're going across the road. And we're continued to be treated as the victim, as the child. And these habits of being a victim grow deep into the mind. And so the bully winds up in high school. He's still the victim, but he doesn't want to be the victim, so he's got to show off that he's not the victim. But if he didn't feel like a victim, he wouldn't be a bully.
Mm.
Okay? And then he grows up to become a cop or a politician, and he does exactly the same thing. He gets hungry and he cries. So this is the whole point is that here we are now as adults, and we still have the attitude of being victims. We need help. We need a religion. We need a plastic Jesus, or we're going to crash our truck. Right? That's the whole way of going is that we need help. And look how many people are willing to help others without being able to help themselves. I mean, we have a whole industry, lawyers, doctors, accountants, builders, car mechanics. All of those people have a certain niche that they can go do something within that niche. And other people come to them saying, oh, please help me. I can't fix my own car. Oh, please help me. I can't do my own taxes. Oh, please help me, Mr. Lawyer. I've got a lawsuit. Okay. And then we go to church. Oh, Mr. Priest, please help me to feel better. And we're looking for someone all the time. But changing that attitude is what we're doing here upon first practice. Oh, I can stop thinking about Aunt Susie and the argument that I had. I can think of something else. I can become my own boss. And so we begin to develop the attitude of being the boss of our life. I'm in charge here, not my feelings. I'm in charge here, not all the rules that I had given up. And I'm the boss because I can see what's real.
Yeah.
Okay. And so in the beginning, the infant, the id or the instincts, that was the boss. By the time we're in the first grade, it's the rule systems become the boss. And it never changes until we do something about it. And that's what the practice of meditation is really about, is to take control of your life away from the instincts and away from the rules and start living in reality in this present moment. To wake that captain up, we got to land this ship and the automatic pilot can't land it.
Absolutely.
All right. So this is a way of understanding how to practice. How to practice is to wake up and put that wisdom into gear. to look at what kind of thinking that we're having and then change it from an unwholesome thought to a wholesome thought. And in the process, we're changing our attitude from being a victim into a winner. So that as we progress, and so back to the Eightfold Noble Path, sati means to wake up and to remember, to look. And now that means to wake up. The captain says, hey, captain, get out of your bed and go look out and sit in your captain's chair and look out the window. Look at what's going on. We need a captain now. Okay, so that's looking. And now the captain sees that his airship, is heading right into a mountain. All right? Bad feelings, 5 seconds ahead.
Mm-hmm.
And so what we can do is we can change it. That's the change. We can actually take a hold of the steering of our own life and make a change. And what is that change? Changing from unwholesome to wholesome, unwholesome to wholesome, from heading into a mountain to heading into blue skies. And so by doing that over and over again, the captain begins to recognize he is in control of this ship. If he does this, it will turn. And so we can. And so that's where the fourth item comes in. The Samma Sankappa is not just changing our language or changing our thought, but we're also changing our attitude. We're changing that deep underlying state of mind from being a victim that needs help into being a champion that is giddy with delight because he is the champion. And we can practice that. Practice feeling on top of the world. This is what I would call then congratulations. So, number one, sati, to wake up. Number two, ditti, to look, to see what's going on, to recognize our airplane is heading towards a mountain. Number three, make a change so that we're now heading towards blue sky. And now the captain can relax again, relief. Oh, wow, I saved that day. I've saved the plane. Congratulations. So look, wake up, look, change, and congratulate. These are the four items on the Eightfold Noble Path. And most people, when they study the Eightfold Noble Path, because the language is in, they don't get this connection that I'm making for you. Mm-hmm. We don't even understand what it means until we actually can see how these features are put together. Now, by doing this and changing our attitude, we begin to integrate. Before, we had the instincts and the rules at war with one another. This keeps us as a crowd inside. Then, in fact, I made a mistake before, and I'll go back and recorrect it, and that is personality view is not determined solely by the rites, rules, and rituals of Sila Bhatta Paramasa. It also has to do with the child's attitude. So if you say, you ought to go on a diet, and then the child gets in front of the refrigerator and says, he may not even have the thought when he's grabbing that Coca-Cola out of the refrigerator, the hell with my diet, I want the Coke, right? Okay, so that's the conflict. You should do this, but we want to do that. We should do this, but we want to do that. We should do that over there, but we don't want to. And so that's what defines our personality, is this conflict between the id and the superego, or between the parent and the child. But when we bring that frontal cortex, when we bring the actual ego in Freud's definition, we bring the parent in to wake up and really take a look and then do the congratulations, what happens is that the mind becomes integrated. It becomes unified. It becomes whole, that the rule system, mommy and the child, don't argue with each other anymore. They're in unison now. And the unison is because they're under the guidance of wisdom, the frontal cortex, the human part of the brain, rather than the reptile and the mammal fighting with each other. And you can see what it's like. That in fact, when the mind is unified, this is, by the way, in the Pali it's called sama area samadhi, and often translated as concentration. But no, we're not going around like this, concentrated all the time when we have right unification of mind. No, that means that we're open and can see what's going on, but there's no internal conflict. Now, here's some internal conflicts that we have to deal with. One is confusion. We don't know. We're confused. We're full of doubt. When the mind is full of doubt, it's not unified. When we are lying, we're not unified with the truth. We're trying to protect. The child needs protection or something like that, and so we lie about it. So lying and wanting things, an example of or a way of looking at this would be when we want something, it's because we liked it. It starts off with the Vedana, I like it. The child likes it. Because of that, then the parent comes in and says, all because you like it, you need it. You need to have it. And then it goes, the next one is that you're not good enough without it. You're not whole. You're not complete. You need that new car. You need that new fancy ball dress. Or you need something, and without it, you're no good. Okay? And so that puts us then into a negative state that we're not good enough because we don't have something that we want. Another thing that happens with that is that if I like it and I want it, it must be good. And if I don't like it and want to get rid of it, it must be bad. And this is where judgments come in. That in fact, this is the rule systems are based upon judgments. And so what we can do is instead of judging things automatically, we can just see it as it is without judging it. This is actually the story of Adam and Eve in the Genesis in the Bible, where they ate of the fruit of knowledge of good and evil, which means that they had to put up, the eating of the fruit means that they had to put up with their judgments. And it's the judgmental mind that throws us out of paradise. We judge this paradise to not be good enough. But when we recognize that everything is already good enough, you are in paradise. All we have to do is stop judging it. Who is the judge? The judge is according to all the rites, rules, and rituals, all the learning that we have done, and we set that up as a standard, not recognizing that our standards are also fluid. We can change the standards. In other words, if you can't jump 10 feet in the air, you can't jump 3 meters, lower the bar to 2 meters. Well, I can't jump over 2 meters. Well, lower the bar to 1 meter. Well, I can't jump over the 1 meter bar. We'll put the bar on the ground. Now you can jump right over. That you're successful. All you had to do was change the standards. And we do that. A lot of people have standards for themselves that are way too high, and they never meet their own standards, and they wind up feeling miserable because they can't get what they want. What do they want? They want to meet their own standards. And we can't meet our own standards, so we feel bad. The answer is, don't have any standards and you can feel wonderful. Throw out all of those rules about how things are supposed to be. That in fact, if you become the captain of your ship and really play with it for a while, you can do loop-de-loops and all kinds of things with that airplane that the automatic pilot wouldn't dare know how to do. And so life can be fun if we learn to play with it, rather than wanting to go back to sleep and let everything be on automatic pilot, which is bound to crash our plane on a regular basis. And so we wind up on a regular basis in bad feelings.
That makes sense. I've just noticed, Dhammarato, my computer's battery's about to go. I've just about run out.
All right. Well, this is a good time to stop, I think, because I think that we've gotten it. I've been watching your face, and you've been nodding a lot, like, yeah, you're getting this.
Yeah, I'm understanding what you're saying, and it's starting to sink in.
Good, good. Well, go practice like that. Go practice to recognize that many of the thoughts we have are thoughts that coming out of the that verbal dialogue of concepts about how things are supposed to be. And every time that we can see that, we say, hey, I saw that. I see you, Myra.
Mm-hmm.
Because the beginner, when he sees that stuff, he says, oh, no, there I go again. Why? Because he stays on the automatic pilot. We have to actually turn that off and make a change.
I understand.
So when we see, oh, that's a negative thought, oh, that's Aunt Susie and I had an argument, but let's throw that out. She's not here now. Wow, what a relief it is. I don't have to deal with Aunt Susie. I don't have to deal with anything right now. I can just sit here and be happy. And we keep practicing that over and over again, and then we can learn to do that when we're around all these other automatic pilots. Because we can use wisdom and we can navigate our way through them.
That makes sense.
Excellent. All right, Corey. Well, we'll see you in a couple of 3 days then.
Great. Fantastic. Thank you very much, Dhammarato. I'll start practicing that.
Excellent. All right. See ya.
See ya. Bye.